Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you. Fire King Snake Eye is going to be the next deck we talk about. Debatably the strongest deck in Master Duel right now. I say debatably because I feel like when it comes to power level, this deck's actually pretty on par with Yubel. But I do think that this deck does have a bit more variety in what it can do. Oh, Snake Eye. Oppressive Snake Eye, oppressing all three metas. You know, I've seen people say that, but I do think that statement is a little bit overblown when it comes to Master Duel. Like, yeah, Fire King Snake Eye in particular is one of the best things you can be doing in Master Duel in terms of, like, one of the most powerful decks. But the power gap between Fire King Snake Eye and everything else is not nearly as vast as it is, you know, in other formats like the OCG and TCG. A lot of the time, actually, when you're playing Fire King Snake Eye, the funny thing about this deck is, like, you don't play the Snake Eye cards, like, a good amount of the time, you know? If you open, like, Ulcanix and a Fire Monster and that's it, that's a line that's pretty much just going to be Fire King stuff, right? Indeed, even just ending on, like, Promethean Princess plus Arvada, that might not sound very good on paper, but let's, like, if you think about the interactions, right? Especially because you'll have a new Garunix in the graveyard that you've set up, right? If your opponent activates a monster effect, you can use Arvada to pop the Promethean Princess to negate it. Then you can bring back Sacred Fire King Garunix to then pop the Kiran to pop another card and bring back a monster from your graveyard. You've also now set up the Promethean Princess in your graveyard, which is also Disruption for some reason because this card is broken. So that's actually a lot of interaction, and that's, again, that's just Promethean Princess plus Arvada, just ending on that board with the new Garunix in the graveyard. Has nothing to do with the Snake Eye stuff. In fact, if I have a hand, right, where I have to choose, if I'm in a situation where, like, off OSS I have to choose, like, do I want to go for Snake Eye Ash and do Snake Eye plays, or Ponix and do Fire King plays, I'm actually going to pick Ponix almost every single time, just because I do think the Fire King stuff ends up being a little bit more robust. So you might be wondering, okay, well then why isn't pure Fire King a tier 1 deck? Well, for the same reason that pure Snake Eye is not a tier 1 deck right now, is that this deck is actually greater than the sum of its parts. Because these two engines are kind of backing each other up, you always have, like, a second game plan. If you lead with Snake Eye stuff, it's not hard to pivot into Fire King stuff. If you lead Fire King stuff, it's not that hard to pivot into Snake Eye stuff. So, and of course there is the glue that holds the strategy together, which is, again, the Promethean Princess, because the board I just, you know, described, the average Fire King end board, isn't possible without Prom Princess, and certainly the Snake Eye stuff that it's doing is also not that possible without the Prom Princess. And again, neither of these decks are tier 1 by themselves, so that's always been my whole stance on where Fire King Snake Eye is at in terms of power level. But again, like, Fire King Snake Eye is not even, again, that oppressive. I wouldn't call this deck oppressive at all in Master Duel. Like, the format is so diverse. Again, you know, the tier 2 and 3 well, tiers are very, very wide open as far as, like, the number of decks in them. And while, yeah, Fire King, Snake Eye, Yubel, and debatably Rescue Ace, like, sit on tier 1 above them all, again, the difference is not that great. So, for this build, as always as ever, we are keeping in mind our ratioing. So I've kind of been having fun doing this, like, deck building and really paying attention to the ratios and then pointing it out in the videos. So, as we've been doing for Sprite and Yubel, or as we've done for Sprite and Yubel, rather, as we've been doing, let's go ahead and count our 1-card starters and compare that to the number of hand traps that we're playing. So, for our 1-card starters, we are on 1 Snake Eye Ash plus Ponix is 2. The Poplars makes 4. Ulcanix, I kind of go back and forth whether or not I count this. Let's not count this for the time being. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Diabell Star's technically a 1.5, but it can be any card, as opposed to Ulcanix, which needs a fire monster. So this is effectively a 1-card starter. So that makes 7. Let's see, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's not bad. 11 1-card starters for a 40-card deck. Definitely not too shabby. And again, that doesn't even count Ulcanix, which, because it requires a fire monster specifically, I think that's like, you know, it's debatable. But so 11 to 13, let's say that. We have 11 to 13 1-card starters. As opposed to our hand trap ratio, we are on Valor is 2, plus Maxi 3, plus Ash Blossom is 8, plus, let's see, the Nib is 9, and then we have 10, 11. So again, making sure that we're keeping that ratio of hand traps to true one-card starters roughly even there. Again, I do think it is pretty important to keep those ratios even. I did actually debate going above 40 for this deck. I thought about playing a third Imperm as well as a third Poplar, but I don't know. That doesn't really necessarily make the deck more consistent because we're going above 40, but again, the main deck count isn't really necessarily as important as keeping those ratios in mind. And if you're able to push the ratios up significantly to go over 40, it's very worth it, but it's like, just playing one more of each starter and hand trap is like, it's a little debatable. You know, especially because they're just additional copies of cards that we're already playing. I went for the 2-2 split on Imperm and Valor here to kind of make Crossout a little more consistent, but also because I was trying out Heat Soul. Never came up, I never end up summoning Heat Soul, but it's like, you know, the Heat Soul, definitely you would rather draw Valor, of course, during your opponent's turn than Imperm. So rather than I would normally do like 3 Imperm, 1 Valor, I decided to just do, again, the 2-2 split here instead. I don't think I'm really doing too much different with the extra, and the main is also admittedly pretty standard. So yeah, as always, you know, I think we've covered pretty much everything about the deck here in this initial kind of talk. Extra deck again, pretty standard. Still in 2 Promethean Princess. You can definitely just play 1, that's more than fine. But if you do own the second copy like I do, then it is very, very good. It's very useful for grind games. There's minor reasons too, like Kashtira Unicorn, but the card's not even that common these days, so that's kind of like whatever. But for grind games especially, the second Prom Princess is so, so helpful. So if you do play 2 copies, I do highly recommend. But if not, you could just play 1, and then like, I don't know, some other generic Link monster. Maybe like Celine Access Code or something like that. You could play that instead, but yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I have to say about the deck. Let's just hop into some of these games here. You know, I just said that, oh, you're not going to run into Unicorn as often these days, but actually our first opponent is on Kashtira. I really don't run into Kashtira that often. I remember I actually got a comment on the tier list video asking, how is that possible? I always see Cash, but I don't know. I just don't think that it's very well. I mean, this is the thing, right? This is the thing about Kashtira that I've always said is that the deck suffers a lot in terms of consistency. So a lot of the time, you know, set 2 is not like a necessarily uncommon opening turn for Kashtira. But even then, even if stuff goes off, it's like it's so susceptible to like Nib and Imperm and that kind of a thing that I don't know. I just don't see it as that much of a threat. So I do have some interesting decisions with this hand. Actually, here's the thing. Going into this set 2 pass here, I actually thought I was on Labyrinth, or that my opponent, rather, was on Labyrinth. So this brought up an interesting question for me. I was like, okay, if I think they're on Labyrinth, then that's going to make this Ulcanix situation a little bit awkward because Ash Blossom's the only fire monster in my hand. So if I want to hold for the Ash Blossom, I'd really rather use it on what I thought would be maybe a lab trap card. So I actually opted to begin with Diabellstar pitching Imperm for that reason. They flipped up an Imperm, which stopped that, of course, in its tracks right there. I think if I was reasonably certain it wasn't lab, I actually might have let Ulcanix pop the Ash Blossom in hand, but that's why I led with the Diabellstar here, so. Alright, opponent does have a Maxi. We have a Call By, which doesn't really make the Maxi in our hand too great, but, oh, that's right, because I was going to chain Maxi here, but then they chained Crossout and called Call By, so I was like, okay, we are playing under Maxi, meaning we're going to have to take the challenge. Actually, that is one thing that's, you know, always worth asking on turn 2. Is do I take the challenge? I think taking the Maxi challenge on turn 1 is like never right as far as like going full combo, but turn 2, like I'm in a situation here where I don't really want to pass on this kind of a board with only Maxi in hand going into their 3 going, you know, 3 going into 4 card hand here because, well, for one, I actually don't know what my opponent's on because they've only played generic cards, right? So I actually, for the entirety of this duel, did not know what my opponent's deck was, but no matter what the deck is, I don't want to play this board into a 4-card hand, which is what made me want to play into the Max C here. That, for me, was the determining factor. So, I'm going to pop the Ulcanix with the Island. I actually did forget that Ulcanix always summons Old Grunix in defense mode. I thought it was coming out in attack mode here. But really, that's just going to mean that I have to do one more special summon than I thought. And that special summon is going to be to link off the Ponix and the Old Grunix into Hita. Really anything with more, or just enough damage to get me lethal, right? So 8250 damage is going to be enough to ultimately swing in here. So I think we end up giving them, what, 1, 2, hang on. 1, 2, is that only 2 draws off the Maxi there? That's actually not that bad. Yeah, activate, chain. They drew 1. They drew 3. They drew 3. Okay. Well, either way, that's not too shabby. And actually, now that we know in hindsight that it's Kashtira, because of course the main thing I'm thinking of when I play into a Maxi is Nibiru, right? Now in hindsight that we know it's Kashtira, it's kind of obvious why they didn't have a Nib. But also, you do want to make sure that if you are playing turn 2 into the Maxi, that you are being tight and efficient, right? That you are doing the minimum number of special summons needed in order to make sure that you're going in for lethal. Now, obviously I'd gone well over 5 summons. I'm not trying to keep the summons down to keep my summon count down to make Nib not live. I'm doing it to give them as few draws as possible to make it as, you know, less likely that they are going to draw the Nibiru. But again, now that we know they're on Kashtira, they weren't on the Nibiru. I don't think they were on the Nibiru anyway. But the majority of builds, of course, don't play it. So yeah, that'll do it for our first game. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next duel here. Alright, so going into this next game, it's going to be up against Sky Striker, which will not be much of a surprise once we see our opponent's name here. We're taking the first turn. Not going second this time. Yeah. I love Ray. I'm sure they just mean that they love the characterization of Ray in the manga, right? Right? Okay, anyway. So I'm going to go for the OSS here, sending off my Ash Blossom here, because I really don't have many other options of the hand like this. They have their own Ash Blossom, which I am going to, of course, cross out. I say, of course, like, I did have the option of using cross out or call by here. I actually opted for the cross out because I thought that the call by would be a better, you know, card to use during my opponent's turn, to have set for my opponent's turn, than the cross out. It does me a little vulnerable to something like Imperm or Nibiru. Of course, if my opponent ended up having that, then I would have definitely liked to have had the cross out, but I thought it was relatively unlikely, so I decided to just go ahead and use it here. Sometimes it's the kind of like decision you have to make, is trying to figure out how useful a card is going to be in the long run, as opposed to which one might be better in the moment. Just kind of weighing pros and cons, right? In a lot of situations, there's not always like a clear-cut correct answer necessarily. You just gotta, again, kind of weigh the pros and cons and figure out what is worth it to you. So I'm gonna go into Hita because our opponent did summon, or use an Ash Blossom rather, so we can summon it with the Hita. Pivot into the Promethean Princess. This is actually going to be one of those games I was talking about during the deck profile, where Promethean Princess plus Arvada might not look like a lot, but that is going to be more than enough here. Again, even disregarding the Imperm and the call by, we can, on our opponent's turn, if they activate a monster effect, use Arvada Pop Princess. That'll bring back the Garunix. If they have another card to pop, we can use Garunix to send Kirin to pop it, and then bring back our Ponix, which will also search, by the way. And then from there, we also have the Promethean Princess set up in our graveyard to, of course, use as more disruption on their turn. Alright, they're going to lead with an Upstart Goblin. I mean, I already knew from their name it was going to be Sky Striker. The Upstart Goblin was just kind of confirming it, so normal summon Ray, they're going to go into the Hayate and then move into the battle phase. I should have waited for them to actually declare the attack before imperming, but I think they can just opt to not attack in that situation anyway. So I don't think that mattered. I don't think it would have forced them. Well, actually, I wouldn't have wanted that anyway, because then they could have brought back Ray. I guess that wouldn't have really mattered. So anyway, as they go to Shizuku, I'm going to use the Arvada effect, but they also end up holding the Widow Anchor, which is a pretty good call on their part, to, of course, negate the Arvada, letting them search the Engage. But yeah, of course, that was also the reason to imperm the Hayate there, was to prevent them from sending the engage from the deck to the graveyard, just making sure they're off that, which is of course their main way to get their plays going, and also would gain them a lot of advantage. I guess they didn't have 3 spells set up in the graveyard, but you have to always kind of assume that they're going to be able to do that, right? Alright, so we top deck Ulcanix here. I don't have another fire monster in hand, but I can pop it for the Fire King Island and then get not only the Ulcanix effect, but also New Garunix's effect as well. Opponent had the Shark Cannon for the New Garunix, which is not ideal, but also not the end of the world here by any means. Alright, so Ulcanix summoning out Old Garunix. Got New Garunix. Promethean Princess is going to activate. They're going to Chain Callby on the Ponix, which is completely fine because that wasn't even my target anyway. My target was actually going to be Hita to set up some more potential high link plays, right? Going to go for the Hita here and then link off into Raging Phoenix, right? Yeah, Raging Phoenix. And I mean, from here, it's going to be a pretty simple and clean. That's the way you're making me feel tonight. No, pretty simple and clean Zealantis OTK. We even have the Callby here for the Ray's Graveyard effect, although, I mean, the Ray herself coming back, I don't think it would actually stop me from OTKing inherently, but she could link off into Kaina, I think is what the Earth one is called, and that would prevent one of my monsters from attacking, but I think I could have even OTK'd through that, though. Like, I don't even think that would have been enough to stop me here. Like, even if they had done it on the Raging Phoenix, because I would have had... No, that would not have been an OTK then. Because they would have had a 1500 attack monster. I would have had Arvada, which is 1800, so that's 300 damage, plus that's 2150 with the Hita. 25 plus 27 is 52, plus 2150 is 7350. So I would have been 550 points off if they had gone right into Kaina here. So never mind. The Callby actually did matter. So that's cool. Anyway, let's take a look at our last game. And that last game is going to be against Ice Barrier. Now, we clearly have the type advantage. So this game should be a... No, we're good. Well, technically, they have the type advantage if it's water over fire, but... Anyway, we're going second. A lot of going second games in these videos. Again, I didn't even really plan for that, but... this is another one of those going second games where I think the ratioing really helped us out. We got the 1-card starter, and we have plenty of hand traps to stop our opponent's stuff. Alright, so they foolish, what, the Mirror Mage? Yeah, Mirror Mage. Royal Mirror Mage, as well as Royal Revealer, so... Very cool on their part. No. Alright. I'm gonna Veiler the... Revealer here. I don't care they sent Swap Frog because they've already sent a Mirror Mage this turn, so it doesn't really matter in that regard. They're going to set 2. One of the 2, I guess, is the Medallion for some reason. Now, they summoned the... what is this guy's name? George? Yeah, Georgius. They summoned old George here, and I decided not to imperm, because here's the thing, right? If I imperm on the Georgius, then they could just synchro these 2 into Lancia. And then I don't really have a way to stop that, right? Like, I'm out of, like, I don't have another imperm necessarily. I guess I could maybe top deck one, but I don't guarantee to have another imperm to be able to stop them from just, like, summoning out the floodgate monsters. So I'm going to let them combo here. I'm actually not going to use the imperm here. I'm going to let them summon the Mirror Mage, and sure enough, they actually used Mirror Mage's effect to bring out all their tokens, which do count as individual summons, thankfully, so I can just nib all this away. But even if I didn't have nib in hand, it still would have been correct to wait there, because then, like, all they had is the Mirror Mage. Like, it would have been much more difficult for them to go into a Lancia, right? So, but yeah, nib definitely saving the day here. Old Grudnick's not a great top deck, but I already have the Snake Eye Ash in hand, so... Wow, I actually forgot about that. I thought for some reason one of their face-down cards was like an Imperm or something. We had to at least play through that, but... Nope, never mind. They're just gonna fold to the Snake Eye Ash, which I guess, you know, makes sense, depending on what the face-down cards were. Would have liked to have seen, but anyway. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much gonna do it. Yeah, because I was trying to figure out if I needed to explain how I was gonna OTK, but the Nib token's defense was only 1600, and like I normal summon Snake Eye Ash, so yeah. not hard to OTK after you've done that, funnily enough, if you can believe that. So that's gonna go ahead and do it for the games for this one. Thanks as always for watching. let's go ahead and just move on to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Just want to give you a huge thanks for watching all the way to the very end of the video. Believe it or not, that is actually one of the best ways that you can support the channel, is by watching the videos in their entirety. But there are many ways in which you can support the channel if you are so interested. The names that you're seeing on screen here, I gotta give an extra special thanks to, because these are people who have chosen to either become a member on YouTube, which if you're interested you can do as well via the join button next to the subscribe button down there, or have signed up over on Patreon and become members there. Link to that is going to be in the description below. Without the support that is being offered by, again, all the people that you're seeing on screen right here, I would not be able to take the time to dedicate to uploading daily YouTube videos. So thank you so very much. But there are also other ways you can support as well. Again, link to the description below. If you like my deck tracker that you'll see in a lot of my videos, the Untapped Companion, you can download that for free, and if you use my affiliate link down there, then that also goes a long way towards supporting the channel. That's again free. So is subscribing here on YouTube. That's also free and a huge way to support. You can also check out Twitch, once again linked in the description below. Following and subscribing over there will not only support as well, but also give you notifications of when I go live if you want to catch some of the live streams. But really, no matter how you choose to support, it all adds up and it all definitely means the world. So thank you, each and every one of you. For now, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out, but more than that, I'm hoping that you have a fantastic day.